I want to start from a very human experience. The feeling of helplessness as I watch my life slip into the same old rut is all too familiar. Even though in my heart I long for something completely different. Perhaps you have found yourself stuck in a cycle of anxiety, frustration, vague resolution, and more anxiety. That cycle makes us believe that fate is an unchangeable sentence. But this book comes in like a knock on the door, reminding us that it was we who turned the key that locked us in that room. The Mastercase system is more than just a set of philosophical ideas, it is a step-by-step roadmap. Takes you from the first stillness of the body to discovering the flow of the subconscious and then to using imagination, emotional faith and mental discipline to open the door to connect with the infinite source of power. I have walked this path not with empty theory but with small exercises that were sometimes so uncomfortable that I almost gave up, and it was those experiences that showed me that power does not come from grand gestures but from repeating simple actions regularly until they become a solid foundation. The beauty of the book is that it doesn't allow us to escape. It does not coax us that simply believing is enough instead. It forces us to face the truth. Outer life is but a shadow of the inner world. If the inside is in chaos, the outside is sure to be in chaos. If the inside is in harmony, the outside cannot be other than in harmony. This cold precision is both terrifying and liberating. It is scary because it puts the entire responsibility for liberation on our shoulders. Because it also gives us the full power to change. I remember the first time I tried to sit still for 15 minutes without moving. It seemed easy, but after just a few seconds, my body was wriggling and my mind was rebelling. I realized I had never really been in control of even my own body. Yet I thought I could control my destiny. This comparison is painful but also eye-opening. It made me understand that to reach great power, one must start from the smallest things. Have you ever wondered? If every thought you harbor today was certain to come true tomorrow, what would you dare to think? Will you still allow yourself to indulge in anxiety and doubt, or will you start trying to plant completely different ideas? That question is not just a mind game but a gateway to responsibility and freedom. This book in its simplicity and rigor puts a key in your hands. It doesn't promise to open every door for you, but it will certainly give you the tools to open your own. And most importantly, it forces you to decide whether you will continue to live by the same old seeds or you will courageously sow a new season. And before going into the book review, we encourage listeners to buy and read it to fully experience the book's content. Because only when you read this book will you understand the issues I am talking about. Please buy the book and support the author. Now let's start reviewing this book with me. I remember the first time I realized that the world was not something out there but a mirror reflecting what I was nurturing inside. Like a person holding a pencil in his hand. I draw the outline of my life with my daily thoughts. Whenever I allow an idea to arise and take hold, it immediately tried to appear in some form. In reality, sometimes it is opportunity, sometimes it is difficulty. But nothing ever happened that did not begin with a thought. If we keep thinking about scarcity, scarcity will multiply. If we direct our mind toward fullness, fullness will come. Not a magic trick, just simple correspondences. Accumulation leads to more accumulation. Loss opens the door to new loss. So the root of everything in my life lies not in external circumstances but in the way I think. In the attitude of mind that I adopt as the foundation. I learned that I must be before I can do, and I can only do to the extent that I am. Power cannot be borrowed from outside. Only when I realized that the power was already within me did it open its doors. There is a silent world inside, a world of emotions, of light, of invisible but vital power. It is the source of all solutions, the root cause of all results. When I learned how to control that world, the world outside changed. I have come to realize that inner harmony reflects outwardly into a harmonious environment, favorable conditions, worthwhile people and situations, and that all imbalances, illnesses, and disorders originate from inner fractures. On the contrary, harmony is the prerequisite for health, for success, for any glory. The connection between the outside and the inside is not just theoretical, it is tied to the way my body and mind operate. My consciousness contacts the world through my senses, through the neural network running along my body, receiving images, sounds, tastes, feelings. If thoughts are illuminated by truth and edification, they are full of vitality and life. But along that same path, all the negative worries and deprivations creep in if I think wrongly. On the other side, more secret. The subconscious operates through the solar plexus, controlling breathing, emotions, imagination, joy, or fear. It connects me to the infinite. With the flow of intelligence throughout the universe, those two centers, the conscious and the subconscious. When I am in tune, I suddenly find myself tapping into an infinite source of power. The future is no longer a vague fate but in my hands. If I just look around, I will be blind forever. If I turn within, I will find infinite wisdom, infinite supply, infinite power waiting to be manifested. This world is but a mirror reflecting the changes within, a mirror of change. I challenged myself with a simple discipline, sitting still, back straight, motionless. Letting thoughts pass without acting on them is difficult at first. Because the body is used to struggling, the mind is used to running around, but only when I master the stillness of the body, will I be prepared to control the stillness of the mind. And from there I saw the door open as I stepped on to the next step. I understand that my life is woven from two parallel streams of activity, the conscious and the subconscious. Consciousness with the ability to analyze, choose and reason is the gatekeeper. The subconscious is different, it operates like a heartbeat, like breathing. No need for us to control but still maintain life. It holds the memory, nourishes intuition. Open the door for creativity to flow like a stream. I was surprised to realize that humanity's greatest creative moments, from Beethoven's music to Madonna paintings, were not the result of slow, calculating consciousness but flowed from the deep subconscious where ideas crystallized and matured. Then suddenly appeared as a surprise gift. The value of the subconscious mind is immeasurable. It warns, reminds, organizes, and most importantly it is constantly creative, but it also blindly follows the premises given by consciousness. If money is put right, it produces right results. If money is misplaced, it remains loyal and creates disaster. So it is my responsibility to protect it, to prevent distorted beliefs from entering. Whenever I let my guard down in anger, fear or chaotic crowd, the subconscious is immediately filled with negative seeds. It nurtures them with the same devotion only to bring disease, poverty, and disappointment. To avoid that, I must train myself to play the role of a gatekeeper. The subconscious never sleeps. It runs even when I rest. As soon as I clearly state what I want, it immediately sets in motion invisible forces to bring it closer. In this way, I do not rely only on my own small strength but open the door to connect with the whole. I have seen this law in action in my own life. Once I enter a difficult encounter with the belief that reconciliation is already available, the atmosphere naturally changes, anxieties disappear, and a path to resolution appears when faced with a difficult problem. If I pause, surrendering my mind to my subconscious, the solution comes suddenly as if it had been waiting for me. From this I understand a principle. Thought is not just an idea, it is energy. And that energy is creative. When I know how to navigate consciously, set it to a clear goal, I am in tune with the infinite intelligence that is the law of attraction. Whatever I think clearly and firmly will automatically find its expression in life. And the next exercise required more than just mastery of the body, but also mastery of the mind. Sit down and keep still. But this time don't let any thoughts linger. Practice more. I became more and more aware of the huge amount of meaningless thoughts that were running through my mind every second. Controlling them is the first step to selecting the right seeds that I really want to sow. I began to realize that my body is not just a physical mass but also a subtle energy relay station where the conscious and subconscious connect. Between the visible and the invisible is a center deep within the solar plexus. From here, all energy flows are distributed to each organ, each cell. It is like an inner sun, radiating light and vitality throughout the body. When this center is running smoothly, I feel my body glowing and my mind at ease. Your presence makes others feel comfortable. That's when energy radiates like an invisible magnetic field that people call personal magnetism. But when the flow is blocked, the light is obscured, it is the root of disease, disorder, and unhappiness. I have found the greatest enemy of this light. Fear is like a dark cloud covering the sun. Fear of the past, of the future, of yourself, of others. All of these cut off the flow of energy, causing the body and mind to contract. When there is fear, light cannot spread. Only when I dare to face it and eliminate it at its root, can I feel life burst forth, free and strong. No one but me can dispel this darkness. Because when I realized that I was part of an infinite power, fear immediately lost its meaning. I have experimented many times with walking with the belief that an endless stream of power is flowing through me. Difficult situations melt away, confidence becomes a shining light where before, I trembled. But how to keep the light burning? The answer lies in mental attitude. Every joyful, courageous, hopeful thought expands the energy center, every sad, critical, closed thought contracts it. When I choose a life-affirming attitude, that center shines forth unceasingly. And then I understood, instead of struggling to change the external circumstances, I just need to keep this inner center radiant, and the world will take care of itself. After facing my fear, I continue to dig deeper into the question of who am I? Is the self that I usually think of just the body moving or the mind thinking? Gradually I realized that both body and mind are just tools. There is a deeper entity that is the commander, the decider, that is the real me. I call it the spiritual self. It does not depend on the body, does not depend on the habits and characteristics that life has attached to me. It is the unchanging part, the part that thinks and directs both body and mind. When I realized this, I had a strange feeling. It was as if I had found a new source of power, a primal power deep within the very roots of my being. That power is most evident through the ability to think, but most people do not know how to use thinking constructively. They let their minds run after selfish, petty goals, and as a result, failure is sown in those very goals. I used to be like that too. Until we understand that a thought is only truly powerful when it benefits not only ourselves but every other part of the whole. Every effort based on taking advantage of or exploiting the weaknesses of others turns against me. Because I am just a part of a larger whole. Harming one part is harming the whole, including me. But when my thinking is in harmony, I am supported by the strength of the whole. I forged myself a simple affirmation. I can be what I want to be. But it's not just the words that remind me of my true nature every time I say them. The spirit is strong and free. If the goals I set are constructive and in harmony with the creative principle, I feel empowered. But that affirmation also requires discipline. If I say something and don't do it, if I promise something and don't keep it, I cultivate the habit of failure. I have to be strict. Once I decide, I will do it to the end. No matter how difficult it is, starting with small things and gradually increasing, I gradually learned to master myself. And once I mastered myself, I found it easy to influence the outside world. There was a moment when I realized that controlling myself was more difficult than controlling a kingdom. But whoever achieves it becomes invincible. They are no longer swept away by circumstances, but they change their circumstances. Because the inner self, once fully conscious, is the heartbeat of the entire universe, I understand that this source of energy is never exhausted. The more you share, the more you give. I become more of an open channel for the flow of the universe to pass through. And so instead of trying to keep it all to myself, I learn to let that energy flow through me, benefiting others. That's how I get more fueled. From here, I began to practice a new kind of letting go. Not only let go of physical tension but also let go of mental tension, to let worries, jealousy, doubts, melt away. In that quiet, I tap into a source of peace and everything seems to work more easily. I used to think that imagination was just a game of the mind. A fantasy that has no practical value but goes deeper. I increasingly see it as the most powerful creative tool humans possess. Every great painting, every history-changing invention, began as a fragile image in someone's mind. Before they existed in real life, they were drawn and redrawn inside. The concept in the imagination is like a blueprint, and reality is just a constructed copy. If the design is vague, reality is scattered. If the design is clear, the actual details must be followed closely. I learned not to disregard fleeting images but to embrace them and hone them until they became clear shapes in my mind. Because I know that once they are deeply imprinted, they will find their way out into jobs, opportunities, and real events. This places a great responsibility on my shoulders. What am I imagining every day? What patterns am I drawing for my life? If I let my mind wander freely in fears and lacks, those will be the blueprints that are printed. And I'm no longer surprised when they appear. I began to practice sitting still, concentrating, and visualizing what I desired in vivid detail as if it were already there. Not just the visuals but the feeling, the sound, the atmosphere. The more I clarify, the more the subconscious takes it in, turns it into a command. What I consistently plant in it will eventually show up. Sooner or later, but visualization is not enough. True power comes from focus. If thought is a ray of light, then concentration is the lens that gathers all that light into a flame that can burn. I realize that most people fail not because of lack of ideas but because they cannot keep their thoughts on one point long enough. They scatter the mind from place to place. When I learned to stay focused, something strange happened. What was vague becomes clear, what seemed distant begins to come near. I found a new consistency in my life. I no longer let outside influences push me around, but I decide what to think about and how long to keep it. That focus becomes the light that lights the way. Successful people are not necessarily better or smarter, but they know how to use this power. They choose a goal, set their mind to it, and don't let anything distract them. I have tried and seen that even the smallest task has a dramatic effect on a writing, a plan, a relationship. When you put all your thought into it, it glows as if it has its own life force. My exercise now became more rigorous, keeping a single thought in my head for as long as possible. At first it was just seconds, then minutes. Each time I got distracted I pulled myself back through time. I feel my thinking ability is trained like a muscle, more flexible and stronger. Then I went further. Understand that for an idea to really take root in the subconscious, it needs one more element, emotion. An empty thought has no power, but when it is coupled with emotion, it becomes a powerful command. Emotions are the electricity that lights the bulb, imagination is the image that creates, concentration is the image that holds. But emotions give it life. I started learning how to combine these three elements. Imagination, concentration, and emotion. When I visualize a future clearly, focus on it and at the same time let belief, burning desire permeate. My whole being vibrated to that frequency. And that's when I saw it coming true. Faith cannot be borrowed. It has to be trained through experience, through trying and seeing that the thought actually produces results. Every time I see something I imagine come true, my belief grows stronger. At one point, I no longer had to try to believe. I know, but the outside world is always uncertain, always testing faith. There are days when I feel like it all falls apart. What I held on to was shaken in those moments. The most important lesson appeared: perseverance, steadfastness to keep the fire inside, regardless of the circumstances out there. Inner success must come before outer success. If I just wait for real-life results to believe, I let the world control me. But if I cultivate the state of success in my heart, living as if it were already coming, then sooner or later circumstances will follow. This steadfastness is not stubbornness but a form of loyalty to the seed I sow. I understand that every day my mind is like land. If I continually plant clear images, maintain them with concentration, nourish them with emotion, and protect them with consistency, the soil will surely produce sweet fruit. But if I let it be, the weeds of anxiety, fear, and doubt will grow over. So the path I take is not a battle with the outside world but the silent work of a gardener within. And I know it's that quiet work that decides everything. I used to think that just visualizing it clearly was enough. But gradually I realized there was a deeper layer. The combination of faith and perseverance. For if imagination is the blueprint, then faith is the substance. And perseverance is the hand that builds. Missing one of the three, the building could not stand. I learned that ideas cannot be developed if they are just passed through. It needs to be fed with emotion, watered with faith and protected with discipline. A seed falls to the ground. If you pull it up today and tomorrow it will never sprout. Likewise, every thought needs time to take root in the subconscious mind, and consistency is the medium in which it grows. I started to practice living as if what I wanted already existed, not pretending but actually experiencing that feeling in my mind, in every cell. When I walk with an inner state of success, I see the difference. My voice is more confident, my eyes are brighter, my actions are more decisive, and gradually the world responds in the same way. I also realize that persistence is not just about continuing when it's easy, but about keeping the fire burning when everything out there denies it. There are days when both circumstances and people show me evidence that my faith is in vain. But if I accept that evidence, I have betrayed my seed. This test is not to destroy me but to prove that I am worthy of what I desire. Every time I persevere through, I notice a subtle shift in the environment, as if the world is watching. Do I really believe what I say? If the answer is yes, I get new evidence, small but clear, as if the universe spoke. Okay, I'll give you more. I gradually understood that the most important thing is not the immediate results but the state of mind. If I keep my mind rich, material wealth will come. If I maintain inner peace, the world will gradually become peaceful around me. Everything outside is just a reflection. The exercise now becomes clear. Maintain the image of success in mind. Regardless of my current circumstances, I must learn to stand firm, not let external circumstances determine my mood, not let temporary failure turn into confidence. This is the power of mental discipline, staying with a chosen image until it becomes a reality. I look back at the whole journey from the beginning, from learning to sit still, controlling the body, then mastering the flow of thoughts, discovering the power of the subconscious, understanding the nature of the ego, using the imagination, practicing concentration, igniting emotions, and finally building steadfast faith. All are like steps leading up to a large door. That door does not open by luck or by outside favors. It opens with silent work within. And once the door opened, I no longer felt like a small person caught up in a chaotic world, but a co-creator. Join the creative rhythm of the universe. Every thought is a seed, every emotion is the water that nourishes it, and every steadfast belief is the sun that shines on it to make it grow. My responsibility is that simple. Choose the seed, care for it, and trust the law that never fails. I had to admit to myself that what I used to call fate was just the result of habitual thinking. Every circumstance, whether favorable or harsh, is a reflection of my inner state as I change within. The circumstances out there seem to be forced to change accordingly. This is not a vague belief but an experience I have tasted to the core. For years I lived in the illusion that happiness or misery came from external events, an opportunity, a friend, a sum of money. But when I look closely, I realize they are mirrors of my own steadfastness or laxity in thinking. The will, if not trained, will run wild like a wild horse, taking me to places I do not want to go, just by repeating the intention, by emphasizing the same direction every day. I just got that horse straight. Repetition is nothing small, it builds character. A brave person is not born with it, but chooses courage over fear many times. An honest man is not lucky but has concentrated 1,000 times on doing the right thing. It is repetition in thought and action that builds the strong structure called character. Some say listen to everyone's advice. But I realized that most of that advice was just a projection of their fears and limitations. If I let them seep in, my subconscious will take them as commands and create a narrow life. That's right. So I have to keep the door of my mind closed, not letting anything that is contrary to my highest goal get through. From here, a hard rule emerges: nothing happens by chance. Any result I see out there has a clear cause. Understanding the cause means holding the key to controlling the effect. If I sow superficially, I get superficial results. If I sow the seed strongly and correctly, the results could not be other than powerful and precise. There are days when failure comes and I want to blame. Unfair circumstances, betrayal by others, scarce opportunities. But when I looked closely, I was forced to admit that the cause lay in the false assumptions I accepted in my thinking. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between true and false. It only executes the blueprint given by consciousness. If the drawing is wrong, the work will be graded. On the contrary, whenever I imbibe a right cause, the result appears with unstoppable certainty. Winning then is not luck but science. I win because I put the complete cause into operation, and so the result cannot be otherwise. Understanding this helps me fear the incident less because I know I can go back and fix it right at the root cause. But understanding the law is not enough. I see clearly that I am still stuck in old habits. Impacts from the environment and people around. There are times when I know the cause but still get pulled away from it due to lack of discipline. And then I understood, mental independence is not an option but a must if I want to go far. Self-control means not letting temporary emotions lead you by the nose, not letting the crowd decide for you, not letting circumstances turn you like a puppet to achieve that. I have to constantly expand my knowledge. I must cultivate an understanding of the rules so that every decision is based on solid foundations rather than vague inspiration. This work does not end in a day or a month. It was a long journey where every wrong step could cost me dearly. But it was also in that journey that I felt another growth. I no longer look at life as a passive person waiting for fate but as a blacksmith. Each hammer blow hits the raw metal until it becomes a blade. I see clearly that in the past years, I let my life be shaped by external circumstances. Now I know that the situation is just a white canvas, colors and lines are waiting for me to draw. And if I don't paint, someone else will. I gradually realized that there was a center deeper than any organ in the body. It is not in the head but commands both body and mind. It is the solar plexus, which ancient cultures called the inner sun. From here, every breath, every heartbeat, every emotion is coordinated. It is the brain of the subconscious, the bridge between the limited ego and the infinite source of energy. Every time I enter the silence, sit still and let my mind drop, I feel like I am touching the door of this center. And it is in that silence that I sow the seeds in my subconscious that will faithfully carry out. I see one thing clearly: the subconscious does not argue. It does not ask why, it accepts the conclusions that consciousness transmits, and then persistently constructs the corresponding reality. If I sow fear, it creates situations for me to fear. If I sow strength, it creates circumstances that force me to live with that strength. Therefore, the most important thing is mental discipline. I can't let myself think wrong. Because every error in thought ends in error in life. Like a compass, if it is off by just 1 degree at departure, the ship will be hundreds of miles off at its destination. I learned to hold on to a single idea, repeating it until it became a constant flow. And as I did, I found my inner strength became as sharp as a well-sharpened knife. But this discipline is not just for personal success, it is also the law of harmony. Because this world operates on moderation, harmony, and balance. Any attitude that lacks harmony will reflect in conflict and disorder. I began to practice keeping my mind in a state of harmony, not allowing restlessness, anger, or hatred to take over. This not only makes me more peaceful but also brings about harmonious conditions. Harmonious people appear as if the whole universe responds to the same rhythm. I understand more and more the importance of keeping the mind open. Any thought that enters has the potential to germinate. So why let the seeds be meaningless or worse? Toxic, easy to take advantage of, I practice controlling the entrance. Allowing only thoughts that are tied to a clear goal to pass through is not narrow-mindedness, but a way to keep the mind's land from being overrun with weeds. In the process, I discovered another law, the law of exchange. All growth is based on give and take. When I try to keep it to myself, the flow gets blocked and instead of growth, I experience stagnation. But when I am willing to give kindness, knowledge, resources, it comes naturally. Other things flow in to fill the void, difficulty only comes when I refuse to let go of the old. Or not ready to accept new things. I used to struggle with the question why I tried so hard but still got stuck. It was then that I realized it wasn't because of lack of talent, but because I was closed off. I want to receive but don't want to give, want to keep but can't let go. And so the law of feedback. I received nothing more. Only when I learned to give naturally did the flow open and I suddenly found new doors opening. Growth is not a matter of luck but of balance and exchange. The more I keep my inner harmony, the more I live in the flow of give and take, the more everything blossoms in a positive direction. And I understand that in this game no one can cheat. Every cause brings its effect. Accurate, fair, without a single mistake. As I look around, I realize that everything moves in rhythm, from heartbeats, breathing, seasons to human growth. Everything follows a cycle. There is a cycle of 7 that I see repeating 7 days, 7 years, 7 stages. Each cycle opens a new level as if life were revolving but actually follows a spiral that goes higher and higher. Understanding this rhythm, I feel less anxious when I encounter difficulties or delays because I know it is just a temporary transition into a new cycle. I also see clearly that material wealth, which people often worship, is only a tool. It is not an end in itself but a means to an end. If I make it the ultimate goal, I lose meaning. But when viewed as a form of exchange, a tool for transforming inner images into reality, it becomes a faithful servant, the self-correction always coming first as the ideal, then as the clear image in the mind, and finally as the outer reality. Reversing that sequence is the cause of countless failures. The interesting thing is that to be satisfied, I have to dare to ask. For years I lived in fear of being too ambitious, so I didn't dare to ask clearly, but when I didn't ask, I never received. Like a bank, if you don't write a withdrawal order, no money is given. I understand that the demand is not greed but a legitimate assertion of inner power. When I dared to sign that withdrawal order, the supply from the universe was activated. Every right action I do is like a deposit. It sits there, waiting for me to pull it out in the form of opportunity or result. And it is those deposits that keep me going. Because I know I always have a reserve fund in the flow of cause and effect, even when the present seems empty. I still believe I have deposited enough to be able to withdraw tomorrow. In all the polarities, light and dark, success and failure and sadness, I see an underlying balance. The key is to know how to balance them rather than letting one extreme drown out the other. When I stay centered, all opposites find their own balance and become a force that lifts me up rather than pulls me down. There is an image that haunts my mind like electricity. I did not invent electricity, but I can discover, collect, transmit and amplify it with suitable structures. Likewise, ideas are not something I create out of nothing, but something I receive and shape. If I have the right inner structure, I gather a lot of strength. If the structure is distorted, that energy will be harmful. I see clearly the limits of a solitary mind. I can do much but never as much as the power of many minds combined. When many people are in tune with the same goal, and are on the same positive frequency, the energy not only adds but multiplies. That is why harmonious groups can create miracles that a single individual could never achieve. But the condition for this thought current to operate smoothly is the environment. If I live in an atmosphere of suspicion, criticism, and resentment, my flow of thought stops. But if I put myself in an atmosphere of trust, inspiration, and goodwill, the energy radiates strongly. I became a magnet for like-minded things and people of the same natural frequency. My life is not determined by luck but by laws as certain as mathematics. If I understand and apply them, the results will surely come like the dawn after a long night. And now, I no longer ask if it will happen, but only what I have sown, what causes I am creating, and am I determined enough to go through the cycle until the day of harvest. I was imprisoned by fear for many years, like an invisible string that tightly wrapped around my every movement. Fear is not just a passing emotion, it is a strong stream of thought, capable of paralyzing the nerves, choking the breath and stopping all creative flow. In a moment of fear, the body trembles, the mind is blind, and the soul seems to shrink into a dark point. I used to wonder if there was any way to escape this invisible shackle. The answer came when I realized that the root of fear is a loss of power. Once I realized that within me there was a stream of power connected to the infinite, fear immediately lost its foothold, like when darkness is flooded with light. It is no longer debated but simply disappeared. That fact reminds me of how humans have harnessed electricity. No one knows what electricity is in its ultimate essence. But by legalizing it, we make it serve, light, operate machines, transform the whole world. Spiritual power is the same. I don't need to prove my existence. As long as I learn to follow the law, it will manifest itself. I began to practice, entering into silence to calm my mind, and then planting a sense of power in it. I do not insist. No resistance, just silent affirmation. I belong to the original infinite source. This feeling is as fragile as smoke, but the more it repeats, the clearer it gradually becomes. Whenever fear arises, I no longer let it engulf me, but can stand firm, look it straight in the eye, and watch it melt away. From here, a new door opened for me about the nature of what we call good and evil. I used to think they were two metaphysical forces fighting each other, but the reality is simpler. Both are simply the result of the same law of creative thought. When I cultivate a noble ideal that is directed toward building and service, the result is called goodness. But when I let destructive, selfish and spiteful thoughts lead me, the result is called evil. The difference lies not in some vague moral scale but in the process of cause and effect itself. Thoughts lead to actions. The act of weaving conditions cannot be blamed on fate or the gods. The chain of causes is self-operating. This is both a warning and a liberation. I am alert because I know I cannot escape responsibility. Today's misfortune is the seed sown yesterday for liberation. Because just change the seed, tomorrow the result will change. I have seen people drowning in misery and despair, waiting for a miracle from outside. But the harsh truth is that no one can save us if we continue to sow old thoughts. Liberation lies not in begging but in knowledge. Knowledge shows us the mechanism of cause and effect, giving us the tools for transformation. And when knowledge turns into action, the chain of cause and effect immediately changes direction. In retrospect, what made me use myself was not the idea of some evil force but the realization that evil is simply the abuse of a law that is neutral, that is impartial, that is absolutely faithful. What goes around comes around. Regardless of whether the sower did it intentionally or unintentionally. And in that neutrality, I find an invitation. If I have the courage to sow the right seed, I am sure to reap the right harvest. I continued to delve deeper into the nature of all unhappiness. There is an unavoidable truth. No life is random. Every external condition, whether bright or gloomy, is woven from the inner thread of thought. When people think wrongly and act wrongly, the inevitable result is unhappiness. But when they shift their thinking in the right direction, happiness and success become an inevitable consequence. This means I cannot wait for a salvation to come from outside. Any real change only happens when I change the way I think and act. Not begging, not compromising, but looking frankly at the chain of cause and effect you have set in motion. Change the cause and the effect will change, any excuse is useless. Because this law is impartial. On that journey, I learned another lesson. Don't limit your thinking to small things. Think big thoughts. Each time I allow myself to maintain a high, broad image in my consciousness. That image gradually imprinted in the subconscious, turning into a model for creative power to work on. It became clear to me that the subconscious mind never runs out of resources. It only waits for clear commands from consciousness. And once the command is given, it works silently until reality appears. I began to understand the mechanics of prayer. Something that I previously considered to be vague in essence. It is no different than gravity or electricity. When conditions are met, results must occur. No bias or arbitrariness. If prayer is just a passing wish, without faith, without perseverance, it is just a meaningless sound. But when it becomes a consistent thought, permeates the subconscious, carries with it emotion and belief, the result comes with certainty like dawn after darkness. I realize that when I hold a noble thought in my mind, I am connecting with an invisible stream. The subconscious mind transforms that idea into an energy circuit, weaving it into the conditions of life. If I sow small ideas, I reap small lives. If I plant a great idea, my life is bound to expand to accommodate it. This whole process gave me a feeling of both challenge and excitement. Challenging because it requires constant discipline, maintaining the image, not letting distractions break it, exciting because it gives me real power. The ability to create life as a visual artist from infinite materials. And I know from now on, I can have no other excuse than my own thoughts. Thoughts not only determine external conditions but also shape the state of health and life in every cell. Every thought is like a mental seed reintroduced into the body. Positive seeds, faith, hope, gratitude make life force circulate naturally, nourish nerves, endocrine blood vessels. But the seeds of destruction, anxiety, jealousy, doubt, block the flow, cause disturbance, and then lead to disease. I clearly see the mechanism of self-poisoning when the mind is immersed in negative thoughts, the body no longer excretes in balance, toxins accumulate and that is what causes pain, fatigue, and collapse. The solution lies not in external things but in cleaning the source within. If I want real health, I must completely eliminate destructive thinking, no half-heartedness, no compromise. Only then does the life force flow strongly, regenerating the body and mind, and knowledge becomes the most precious medicine. Because it allows me to choose the right seeds, sow them in my mind today to reap health and peace tomorrow. Realizing this, I felt a new responsibility, not to ignore what passed through my mind, every little worry. If repeated, it becomes a seed and then a bitter fruit. I must learn to be vigilant like a gardener who pulls out weeds as soon as they appear and replaces them with positive seeds. I feel my body is energized, my mind is clearer, and even problems that once seemed heavy gradually disappear. It is here that I touch on another aspect, the money consciousness. I used to think money was something that randomly flowed down the drain of luck or cunning. But the more I observe, the more I see it follows a clear law of wanting money. First of all, I must have real desire and, more importantly, must overcome the fear of poverty. Because fear is a signal that blocks the flow. Meanwhile, an open, receptive mind is like loose soil. Will attract supply. But the law goes deeper. The first success of anyone is service. To become a money magnet, I have to create real value for others, no shortcuts. If I help others get what they need, money comes as a consequence. But if I try to collect for myself and not give, the flow immediately stops. Money consciousness is not greed, but an attitude of receiving the flow along with a willingness to give. It is a balance between aspiration and service. And when I put myself in that position, new opportunities appeared, relationships grew stronger, and wealth became a natural consequence instead of a tiresome pursuit. I understand that true wealth does not come from holding on to things but from the ability to give value, to want to attract money. I must become a magnet, and that magnet is made of integrity, service, and creativity. I cannot take from others and expect to be rich forever. The law of compensation does not allow injustice to persist. Any benefit I create for myself must at the same time be a benefit to others. Otherwise it will turn into an obstacle when I help others make money. That is, I expand the very flow that is nourishing me. Every opportunity one give becomes a thread connecting me to more abundant sources of service. The more useful I become, the more useful I am. I attract more to myself than I give away. And that attraction is not accidental. It is governed by the very laws I have learned throughout my journey. Thought creates cause. Cause and effect. The final truth I learned is that people get out of life exactly what they put into it. No more, no less. If I sow fear, distrust, and hatred into the world, I will receive an identical reflection. If I sow in it faith, integrity, and service, the result cannot be other than success and peace. This knowledge is the key that unlocks the door to liberation. It ended my years of poverty and sorrow. I no longer pray for luck, no longer cling to any external blessings. I know that this law operates with mathematical precision. It does not require me to understand the whole of being, nor does it require me to believe in any particular form of religion or science. As long as I play by the rules, I will get the right results. And at the end of the journey, I remembered the old dream of the alchemists. Turn the pond into gold. The secret they seek lies not in the furnace or the laboratory but in the human mind. Gold is first created in the imagination, tempered with faith and discipline, and then manifested in the hands. Gold in the mind becomes gold in life. Not a miracle but the result of immutable laws of operation. When I look back at it all from those early days of awkwardly sitting still in silence. Until you know how to use your mind to build and then eliminate fear, practice discipline, understand the law of exchange, and tap into the power of service. I see a great unity. Every separate piece has been put together to form a picture of man and the universe that is not in opposition but operates together in a single creative flow. And when I know how to be lawful, I am no longer a passive person in life but become a co-creator, building reality with the power that has been available since the beginning. As we come to the end of this journey, I want to stop with you in front of a mirror. Your life today is a reflection of the thoughts you nurtured yesterday. The question is not what is happening to me but what I was thinking to make this happen. Do you have the courage to face that question to the core? The biggest lesson I learned from this book was to stop waiting for mercy or chance. What I got did not come from some vague kindness of fate, but from an immutable law: thought leads to action. Action creates conditions without exception. When I understood this, I was forced to put my hands on the wheel. Instead of sitting behind the wheel blaming the bumpy road, I learned that fear, although it may seem like just an emotional state, it is actually a form of destructive thinking that has physiological power. It makes the nerves tremble, weakens the body, and blocks the flow of creativity that wants to break through. Not begging for fear to go away, but cultivating a sense of power as I remember that I am connected to an infinite force. Fear no longer has a reason to exist. I also realize that what we call good and evil are not two competing metaphysical forces but simply different results of the same law. An ideal built on the right seed. We call it good. A destructive thought sows wrong seeds. I call it evil. And when you understand that, everything becomes clear. If I want my life to change, I just need to plant different seeds. I was skeptical about prayer until I saw it work like electricity or gravity. Prayers are not answered because someone takes pity but because the law kicks in. If conditions are met, results are bound to come. And if prayer is just a superficial wish, without faith, without perseverance, it is no more than a fleeting shadow. But when the thought permeates the subconscious nourished by emotion and faith, the response is as precise as dawn following darkness. From then on, I learned to take care of my mind like a gardener of 100 lands, of anxiety, jealousy, and doubt. Every little seed can turn into a weed that chokes the garden. Only knowledge and discipline will allow me to uproot and replace with healthy seeds of goodness and health. Wisdom. Joy is no longer something given but a fruit from the garden itself. Another lesson comes from money. I used to think money only came with luck or tricks. But now understand that money also obeys the law. The fear of poverty is the lock that blocks all opportunities. Wealth consciousness does not begin with accumulation but with service. When I help others get what they want, the flow immediately opens. When I give real value, money comes as a consequence. What crystallizes in this entire book is a permanent exchange. I get exactly what I give, no more, no less. And this is the paradox that is less easy to grasp. The more I receive, the more I try to keep it for myself, the poorer I become. This simple truth is enough to erase all justifications of luck, fate, or divine favoritism. So after going through this journey with me, what seeds will you choose to sow for tomorrow? Do you dare to sit down, listen to your own thoughts and then decide that from now on you will sow differently? Thank you for your patience in coming this far. I hope what I share will not just stop at words but will become seeds you carry with you. See you.